Hi, boys and girls. Today is the first day of our PV Kids Club summer activity program.
Yeah.
And this summer, we're going to be reading some stories to you. And maybe as we go along, we'll have some surprises, maybe some puppets, maybe some activities like paper crafts and things that
We don't have puppets in here.
We don't? Oh,
They're all back there.
I'll have to go find them, won't I, when it's time to use them.
I mean up there.
But for today we're just going to read a couple of stories, okay?
Okay.
And I brought you guys a treat. You know what these are?
Gummy bears. Gummy bears.
They're gummy bears.
Fruit.
Who can resist gummy bears?
They're fruit.
They're fruit, yeah, they're made with fruit. So, tell you what, I'm going to open them.
And there's,
Hold your hand out, and I'm going to give you
I'm
a
going to put
few
mine in the cup.
of these. There, 5 for you, and ooh,
Uh-oh.
I threw them all over the floor, didn't I? How many did you get, Andy? Can you count them?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, you got 6. Well, then Sherry needs 6. All right. Okay, I'm going to set them right down here. All right, so today we're going to start off with a story called Grandpa's Garden Helpers. And are you a helper in the garden?
Mm-hmm.
You are? Well, I need your help then because I got weeds in my garden. You going to come help weed?
Yeah.
You are, okay.
I want to do it today.
Oh, well, we'll see. This story starts out with this line. John and Grandpa watched the sun disappear in the western sky. Sounds like it was sunset, huh?
Mm-hmm.
John was visiting Grandpa for a few days. Come and look at my garden, Grandpa said. It is full of good things to eat. Oh, what kind of things do you think he has to eat in his garden? Carrots and tomatoes.
Pumpkins.
Pumpkins and watermelons.
Zucchini.
Oh, that's my favorite. Is that your favorite? Yeah, no, not really. Okay, you can you can see all of my garden helpers, Grandpa said. Oh, what kind of garden helpers do you think that Grandpa has in his garden?
The bugs.
Bugs? Are bugs helpers?
Crickets.
Crickets? Okay.
Like cricket. Worms. Cricket.
Well, let's find out. I didn't know you had someone to help you in the garden, John said. Who are they? Oh, yes. I have several garden helpers, Grandpa said with a twinkle in his eye. My helpers keep the bugs away from my vegetables. Uh-oh. Sounds like bugs aren't very good helpers. Yeah. Okay.
Well, ladybugs are.
But let's find out. You're right. Ladybugs are helpers. John and Grandpa walked quietly around the edge of the garden. Suddenly, something hopped out of its hiding place under a big squash vine. Look, Grandpa, John pointed excitedly. Oh, that is Mr. Toad, Grandpa explained. He is one of my helpers. He keeps the bugs and worms off my squash vines. Keep watching. Oh, Mr. Toad just caught a bug, John exclaimed. Grandpa and John continued to walk around the garden. Suddenly, John jumped behind Grandpa. It's a snake! It's a snake! Run! John yelled. I don't like snakes. Oh, Grandpa said, holding John's hand. Slim won't hurt you. He's one of my helpers. He likes bugs too. John watched as the green garden snake wiggled around the stalks of corn while looking for bugs that could harm the corn. John saw Mr. Toad was hopping fast across the yard. Why's Mr. Toad in such a hurry? John asked. Oh, well, Mr. Toad is afraid of Slim, Grandpa explained. Not only does Slim like bugs, he likes toads too. So when Slim is helping me in the garden, Mr. Toad hides under the porch steps. Where does Slim live? John asked. Well, you see those rocks over at the edge of the garden, Grandpa pointed? That's where he lives. Sometimes when the sun is high up in the sky, Slim sleeps on one of the big warm rocks. Grandpa told John how Mr. Toad had to be very careful not to visit the garden when Slim was there. Slim liked to hunt in the garden in the daytime too. So Mr. Toad did his hunting in the evening when Slim was usually asleep. Sounds like a good arrangement, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go sit under the tree and watch for my other garden helper, Grandpa suggested. As the stars began to appear in the sky, something swooped down into the garden. That, what is that? John asked, jumping up. Why, that's Batty, my other garden helper, Grandpa smiled. Can you guess what kind of an animal Batty is?
A bat.
Wow! Oh, I think you're right. Batty lives in the barn. He likes to hunt at night, Grandpa said. Sometimes he sees Mr. Toad, but most of the time he is there alone. Oh, I like your garden helpers, John said. Yes, my garden helpers are very important to me and to my plants, Grandpa nodded. You know, I'm glad God made all of these animals so they could help me. They make my garden grow. Now, do you know what kind of a garden helper I have in my garden? Want to guess?
A bug.
No, it's not a bug.
A cricket.
It's not a cricket.
Madison.
Yeah, Madison helps me, but she's not an animal, really. She's my granddaughter.
Garden snake.
Oh, I haven't seen a garden snake, but it's kind of like a garden snake because it's a reptile.
Lizard.
A lizard, you got it. I have a great big fat lizard that lives under the strawberry planters and runs back and forth. And every time I'm down there, you want to know what he does that's really fun?
What?
He comes out and he sits really still. And then I pour water over him with the garden hose. And he sits there with his head up. And it's like he's getting a sauna, bath, shower, something. He just sits there and he goes back and forth like this and loves the water flying over top of him.
Well,
isn't that funny?
Well, there is snakes that like water.
Yeah, snakes like water too, don't they? So that was a pretty good story, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to read you one more story from here. And it's called Baking Bread.
Yummy.
Yummy. Have you ever baked bread? No?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, baking bread is a lot of fun.
Well, I
And
have
you know what the best part of baking bread is?
What?
Eating it.
Yummy. Well, we have a chocolate banana set.
Yeah, sometimes you can make fruit breads.
Yeah.
But this kind of bread.
Chocolate bread.
Chocolate bread, yeah.
And
This
also
kind
we
of
have a
bread
set that
is
you
the
can
kind
make
that smells so good when it's baking.
chocolate bananas.
With chocolate and bananas? All right. Well, I don't think we have any chocolate or bananas in this story, but you listen carefully and see if you find anything that's interesting in this story we can talk about, okay? All right. Joseph Anderson Danetti looked at Grandma. What are we going to do? He asked. Grandma looked back at Joseph. Well, we're going to bake bread, she repeated. Now, go and wash your hands. Do you know how to make bread? Joseph asked as he hurried across the room. Grandma swatted him with a dish towel. Of course I know how to make bread, she retorted with a smile. When Joseph returned to the kitchen, he saw that Grandma had put on her big blue and white striped apron. She looked like a real cook. What is this? He asked, shaking a jar with tiny, roundish, beige balls in it. Why, that is the yeast, Grandma said. It's what makes the bread rise.
Makes it go poof, poof,
Yeah. Please put 1 cup of water in the big measuring cup for me. Andy, do you want to sit on the floor?
I saw the big man.
Oh, you're looking, there you go. You want to see the picture. Do you guys want to see? All right, yeah, big measuring cup. All right, I'll hold it up here so you can see. Joseph carefully measured 1 cup of water, heated in the microwave for 1.5 minutes, Grandma said. How many seconds is 1.5 minutes?
5 minutes.
No.
2 minutes.
1.5 minutes, but how many seconds is that?
7 minutes.
Did you remember that 1 minute has 60 seconds in it? So what would be half of 60?
70.
30.
40.
If we add 60 and 30, we get
45.
90 seconds. 90 seconds in 1.5
It
minutes.
was 45.
Okay, thank you, Andy. All right, so Joseph put the measuring cup in the microwave and he set the timer for how many seconds? 90 seconds. Now, put a teaspoon of sugar in the water and stir it up, Grandma said over her shoulder. You know, she was busy pulling things out of the pantry. Joseph followed Grandma's directions. Now, Grandma said, put 2 tablespoons of yeast in the water. So Joseph did, very carefully dipped his teaspoon into the yeast and got 2 of them and put them in the water. In a few minutes, the sugar will help the yeast start to grow, Grandma said. You know, that's fun to watch. The yeast will get all bubbly. Then you will know it's alive, and it will make the dough puff up and not just sit there. When you bake it, it will be nice and fluffy and not solid like a brick. We don't like to eat brick bread, do we? Ugh.
Actually,
Now,
I do.
We need to get the flour and other stuff ready to mix in. Give me a great big sorta kinda medium sized bowl.
You mean?
Joseph put the second largest bowl that Grandma had on the counter. Okay, first we're going to start with the whole wheat flour. So put about 3 cups in the bowl. Joseph looked at Grandma questioningly and curiously, and he asked, "Do you have a recipe?" "Why, of course I do," Grandma said. "It's right here in my head." Now, put in some cornmeal with the flour. Well, how much?" Joseph asked. "Oh, you know, about a cup or so," Grandma said. Joseph frowned. "Exactly a cup?" he asked. Grandma put her hands on her hips. "Well, bread making is not a specific science, you know. It's really an art. And that means it doesn't have to be exact." Oh, Sherry, I think I'm going to give you another gummy for sitting so nice and still and trying to help your brother sit nice and still.
I am already am.
You are going to sit nice and still? Okay, well then I'll let you have 2 as well. Okay,
Huh?
so where were we in the story?
Yes.
It's not exactly a science, is it, to make bread? It's more of an art, or maybe a combination of the 2. Okay. Joseph grinned. "Now, I know why you are making bread," he said. "It's art, not cooking." Grandma grinned back. "Get out the oatmeal," she said. Soon all the dry ingredients were ready. Whole wheat flour, cornmeal, oatmeal, and salt. "Oh, wow," Joseph exclaimed, looking at the measuring cup that held the water and yeast. "It is really growing. This is so cool." Yeah, there's that picture with it growing in there.
Oh.
Yeah. Grandma put about 4 cups of warm water into her biggest bowl. She let Joseph pour in some molasses and then added the yeast mixture to it. She showed him how to gradually add more and more flour and stir the dough until it was absolutely impossible to stir it anymore. And then she dumped the dough onto the counter and taught him how to knead it. Not knead it like I absolutely have to have it, but knead it as in how you move the dough back and forth to make it mix together and to develop the gluten in it so that it will form into a really smooth, textured bread dough. Okay.
Yeah.
So, we are going to take a loaf of our bread over to the Thomases, she told Joseph as she began to grease the bread pans. Mr. Thomas was laid off from his job 3 months ago, and I saw Mrs. Thomas yesterday while I was out walking. She told me how God has been supplying all of their needs. Several times she has come home and found bags of groceries on their doorstep, and she found some money in the mailbox. And somebody mailed them coupons for free pizza, Grandma laughed. You know, Mrs. Thomas said God even provided for her favorite dessert. Yep, somebody gave her a great big bag of chocolate chips. What were we looking for in this story, Andy?
Chocolate.
How did we find it?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Chocolate chips. Now she can make chocolate chip cookies. Joseph
Yeah,
rolled and
chocolate
punched the bread
cookies.
dough. Hey, he exclaimed. My Bible lesson this week is about bread too. It's about how God made sure that a widow lady always had enough flour to make bread for herself, her son, and the prophet Elijah. You know, but the story doesn't say anything about cornmeal, oatmeal, or molasses. Well, you know, people all over the world make bread, Grandma said, and they use what they have. Some kinds of bread have lots and lots of ingredients, but bread can be very simple too, like tortillas are a kind of bread, and you can make them with just flour and water. Or cornmeal and water. Have you had corn tortillas? Yeah, just cornmeal and water.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it was tortillas that widow was making, Joseph said, but it's nice to know that God cares about what happens to people, he added. Yes, it sure is, Grandma agreed. That is what makes Christians the happiest people on earth, because we know that even when we have troubles, God is taking care of us. Like Mrs. Thomas, they don't have much money right now to go around and pay their bills and get the things they need. But you know what? I've never heard them complain. She only praises God. Grandma poked a finger into the dough. It was soft and springy. Oh my, this is going to make a good loaf of bread, she said. Can we try making simple bread sometime, Joseph asked, you know, like Elijah bread? Why, sure, Grandma said with a grin, as long as I don't have to gather sticks outside the village and build a fire to bake it. Because it would be so much easier to just put it on the stove, right? Or in the oven. We are so spoiled. Back in the olden times, people had to build fires to cook their food, and they would take bricks and they would make like an oven and build a fire underneath of it to put their bread dough in, and it would rise. Some people like Little House on the Prairie, they'd bake their bread in the fireplace. Yeah. And all around the world, people do things differently.
Or they would have wood burning stoves.
Yes, they would. But the one thing that we can always remember is that when we trust God, he takes care of us, doesn't he? And he protects us and he loves us.
Yeah.
So those were good stories this week, weren't they?
Yeah.
Well, next week we'll have another story or two and maybe even something special. Okay? Okay, so thank you for listening to the stories today.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.